All right, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Idea Chat CNY. I'm Tom Charles. This is Adam Gold, and we're going to be talking today about this beautiful restaurant, Funk N Waffles. For anybody tuning in for the first time, Idea Chat CNY is a web series that brought to you by the RVD Idea program at Syracuse University. We try to facilitate different events with entrepreneurs in the area and across the world to talk about the exciting things they're doing and try to teach you about entrepreneurship in your journey as well. In the past, we talked about things ranging from design, startup culture, green technology, and today we're going to be talking about fusing two different value propositions into one company. Before we turn the attention to Adam, I do want to encourage people to tweet along using the hashtag IdeaChatCNY, and you can direct any questions you have to @IdeaCuse. And just some background on Adam, he actually went to his undergrad here at Newhouse in Syracuse University. He received a major in television, radio, and film. And he also got a minor from VPA in music industry, which obviously helped him along his way. During his time here, he entered a business plan competition 2 separate times, one time winning $5,000 in cash. That helped him along his way as well. The restaurant has been featured on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. And fun fact that I learned right before the show is that Adam actually plays at Guy Fieri's birthday party every year, so that's pretty interesting. And in addition to that, he actually just opened a new location downtown very recently. So it's a big time for Funk N Waffles, and we're excited to talk about it. And on top of all this, he does play keyboard for a very great funk band called Funk as well. So that's a little background on you, Adam. And I do want to open the floor now just to you to give your own version of the story, how you got started along those lines.
Well, let me tell you, when I was a junior in college, I had a group called Sweaty Pants.
Nice.
And it was myself and a drummer and 2 horn players. And we played instrumental funk dance music. We used to play in my basement on Ackerman Ave. I was in 900 block. And so once or twice a month, we throw a little house party in the basement, as you do, on the 900 block. And for some reason, we decided to serve waffles on one of these occasions. We had a neighbor, his name was Dave Kahn. My buddy Kyle Correa, who was my business partner for several years. He lived in the house with Dave Kahn. And Dave had a waffle iron, and one night we just started experimenting with putting like Pepperidge Farm cookies into waffles. And so we took that idea and said, let's just give these away at a house party the next time. So we were having this house party, and we made the basement look all cool with lights. We kind of went, in on it. I remember throwing out $100. I think it was the first time I invested in Funk N Waffles. It was his junior year party. For $100, we got all this yogurt and waffle batter and all these toppings, and just gave out waffles to everybody. I noticed like instantly when the waffles were being made, people just started going crazy. It was like you lit something under their feet. They smelled waffles. This wasn't a normal party. They started calling their friends, and even back then wasn't like text land. It was like call your friend and be like, get over here. So I just remember being like, man, like something happened. This vibe is working. And we just called the parties Funk N Waffles because it was a funk band and waffles. So very quickly we started doing these parties at people's houses. It was sort of underground at first, and then we started promoting a party at a bar in downtown Syracuse, actually on North Salina Street. The place was called Mezzanotte. They were already a music venue that was featuring really great funk music. But we took a weekly night, and I think it was every Thursday night, we had an event called Funk N Waffles, where we'd have DJ, I'd be spinning with my friend Dave, and Kyle was selling waffles at the bar. So we sort of moved from that grassrootsy sort of house party thing, not legitimate, to catering at a bar for a weekly event, a little more out in the open. By the time we graduated college, we had done the what was called Mayfest. I think it's called SC Appreciation Day or something.
It's still Mayfest. Yeah, we still call it Mayfest. The students do at least. They know what's up.
So you know what's up. You're in Gifford Auditorium, slinging waffles during Mayfest. With a live band on stage and just waffles all over the place. So we had our own Mayfest event. Now, the biggest thing though was this business plan competition, which we noticed our senior year in the newspaper. I used to live with Wes Miles from and Riot.
Oh, cool.
He was my roommate our senior year. And Wes noticed in the newspaper, he's like, oh, look, there's this business plan competition. Like, I'm going to make a t-shirt company.
Right.
You know, him and his friend are going to make a t-shirt company. And we'd already been doing Funk N Waffles for like a year or so. Right. So me and Kyle are like, we're living in the house too. We're like, well, if you're going to do a t-shirt company, then we're going to do Funk N Waffles.
Right.
You know, because it said it was $40,000 in prizes. You could just, all you had to be was a student.
Right.
Nothing else. You just entered. So we got in there and we entered. We made it like past the first round, and then it's like, you know, it's our spring break, and we're like, we have to sacrifice this spring break to write the business plan because we hadn't written it. You know, we hadn't finished it. So I remember being there, like me and Kyle in his house, just trying to like finish his business plan. I remember this guy Craig Waters, who was a professor at business school, and he was like telling us literally on the phone, he's like, don't mess this up, man. Like, turn in this business plan. Like, no matter how much you finish, just turn it in, man. He's like, it's got a good feeling about it. So we're like, all right, Craig. We did what we could, being film majors, literally. Yeah. You know, trying to be business students. And we ended up placing something like 5th place in this competition. Wow. So we graduate college, and we're like, well, we're in the film industry, which usually means you like a PA for a few years, and just like run around getting people's calls. Exactly, working bottom. Yeah, you gotta start at the bottom, basically. Even with Syracuse behind you, you still gotta do that grunt work. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But we also had this business plan that was like apparently pretty decent. Right. Because out of like 75 teams, they gave us the 5th place plaque. Right. With no experience. With no experience. Right. Just stupid waffle. Right. You know, so we're like, well, you know, we talked to our parents and we're like, listen, like, we need a year to like think about things. If we can score lease and open this waffle joint, then like that's what we want to do. Right. You know? Of course. Yeah. If we can't get the ball rolling, we'll come home and we'll work wherever we have to work. You know, and so within that year, we graduated college. We took our girlfriends and we went on this cross-country road trip all the way out to Canada, down to California, down to Colorado, Wyoming. We just did the whole tour of the country so we could see, first off, just have some fun after college. But also we were doing research because we wanted to see what's a funky coffee shop. You know, we didn't have any here in Syracuse at that time. I knew from going to concerts in like Burlington and Ithaca, and like I knew what a college town vibe was. Right. But me and Kyle spent this time on the road making sure we hit every funky breakfast joint we could find. You know, and we did it. We went to each one. We took notes. We talked about it. We brought the vibe back to Cuse. And after about 3 or 4 months, we found a lease that was here with a coffee shop called La Taza. Okay. And so now we get into like a little more specifics of how it all went down. So we came back to town. We got jobs in the food industry. Okay. Cool. That was the first step. Yeah. It was like more research, basically. Yeah. Let's learn how to like even work in this industry because we had no experience. Right. So we worked next door at this Thai restaurant called Apple's. Okay. Phenomenal Thai food. Yeah. They're killing it. You know, and so Kyle was like line cook and I was washing dishes. We were just kind of getting our feet wet. On the way out one night, I peeked my head in here because it was open. Right. And the guy who owned the place actually helped us write the business plan competition. Oh, get out of here. Yeah, his wife is a CPA. And we came to them when we were doing research to say, like, how do you do this and that? Because you just kind of open a coffee shop. Right. So this guy's like, what are you doing here? He's like, I thought you graduated. And I'm like, Mike, like, we're trying to open a Funk N Waffles, man. Like, did you remember that competition or whatever? And he's like, Adam, like, we need to get Adam. Just like, buy this coffee shop. Wow. Like, right then. Was that like, scary, though? Being like, well, you have to wonder why he's trying to get out of it. Well, I could tell. I mean, the place looked pretty weak. You know, it was like black leather seats and beige walls, and there was no color. So he just didn't have like the right vibe. He just saw the Starbucks line, and him and his wife thought they could get some of that. Right. You know, but the location is really tough for them, and they didn't really have any clever thing, nor did they really work here. Right. So it was just sort of like I don't know, it was like a business prospect fit for them, but it wasn't like in it. They weren't in it. Right. Also, they just had 2 babies. Oh yeah. So this was just like worst time for them to like open a new business. So they just needed to get out because they were failing, and obviously that was scary. But I also felt like, having gone to school here for 4 years, there's like hundreds of people in Syracuse that already knew about this. Yeah. You know, we were pretty confident that if we like started selling waffles and got the word out, like, we'd be all right. And you're fortunate in the sense that Syracuse rent is actually fairly affordable too. It's a good place to try it out. I mean, compared to being in like New York City or something like that. It's really, I don't know, it's hard to say because New York City would be the most expensive market in the world. Right. right?
Right. Yes.
But there's other options.
Yeah.
And for where we are, this is really expensive because we're on Marshall Street.
Right. That's true.
Like
right
the most
around the
popular university in upstate New York.
Yeah.
So this is probably the most expensive real estate.
That's true.
Next to like Cornell, I guess. They'll try to get anywhere upstate New York. Marshall Street is as pricey as it gets. They're paying like 6 or 7 G's for like 1,000 square feet.
Wow.
That's New York City prices. Because you'd pay 20 grand for like 2,000 square feet in New York City.
Right.
So if you think about it, it's actually worth the trade-off because at least in New York, the city doesn't sleep, right? You get 24 hours of business.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually really difficult. I have to say, like, student markets are tough because they're gone 3 months a year.
Right. As soon as
25% of the year.
Oh, that's what you mean.
Spring break and summer. Spring break and summer. That's aside from the fact that your market turns over.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
That's another point. Yeah, that you go abroad, you transfer schools, you graduate, but even just the fact that like for 3 months a year, most of these businesses close. Right. And that's an awful way to start.
Right.
Because then you're paying rent for 12 months. But back to the whole thing is he's like, buy this coffee shop. And we're like, we have no money. We just graduated college.
Right.
You know, we worked out a deal to take over his business, their business. And so that was essentially like taking on all the bills, getting our own insurance, getting our own employees, basically stopping them from leaving.
Right.
And essentially working out a way to like buy off their equipment over time. We got super lucky, man. Like we could have bought this thing if we had the money, but this couple saw in us the potential for success.
Right.
They were like, you know what? I have a feeling it's going to work. And after 2 years, we paid it back. Their lease was up. We got our own lease.
Very cool.
And then we're in. Now it's been 8 years here at Funk N Waffles.
Right.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's cool. The thing that I like about that story, there's kind of 2 elements that I really like. First, you were kind of building your brand before you actually. One of the main learnings I've had in the time that I've studied business is to test an idea with as low cost as possible, and that's exactly what you guys did. You found a way to test it for $100. You essentially proved the feasibility, and then you had people knowing about you, like you said, before you ever invested in a place. And it's also interesting too. A lot of times people sit down. I mean, you did write the business plan, but a lot of times people get really hung up on having this big growth vision. It sounds like with you, you kind of just saw opportunities as they came up and capitalized on them as they kind of surfaced. Yeah,
I mean, we had to take it step by step. I mean, the first part was obviously finding the brick and mortar location, the actual retail spot. You know, but you make a great point that like having 2 or 3 years of grassroots marketing was really helpful. You know what I mean? And it's not something you can always do, but I think nowadays in the food industry, the food truck is sort of your way of doing it.
Right, it is.
Because it's minimal investment and there's no rent really. Right. So like for 25 G's, you buy a truck, outfit it to whatever you got to do. And you can kind of like test out the market. I think that's a really great way for people nowadays. If you have like a food concept idea, is get your food truck, get on the road, and just get your feet wet doing it. Because that's a mini kitchen. It's only going to be like a little bigger. You know, once you get a real space. So
that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm thinking, how did you use that cash from the business plan competition?
We were already open.
Right.
When we won the second entry that we did, and $5,000 doesn't go very far in this business, unfortunately. We split it up between the people in the team, right? Right, yeah. So like there was a few people on the team. Only me and Kyle were 2 of the 4 members. So we got like half of it for the business. We just put that to the rent. Yeah, that makes sense. There's there's like a never-ending need for cash in this sort of business because there's always improvements to everything you have. Right. There's equipment that's breaking, you need to buy new equipment. Right. There's paint that's peeling after 5 years, you gotta paint it. You gotta fix this, you gotta upgrade that. So I mean, I wish it was some sort of like life-changing thing, but it was more like we failed the first year, or we got 5th place the first year, which is no cash flow. And the second year we went back in, there was a different business plan for frozen waffles. Oh wow! See, they didn't like the idea of a restaurant because historically restaurants fail like 9 out of 10 times, right? But we had this idea. It was like, well, as another revenue stream, we want to sell frozen waffles in the food aisle. Okay. And there's a gigantic market for that. I mean, they go waffles. We're on our way. Oh, that's really cool. We're starting to sell our waffles frozen. That's awesome. You know, right now we do it in the store, but we'll eventually have it hopefully at like local retailers, the Vitamins, the Sam's Club. Yeah, that's really cool. You know, stocking fees are like really crazy, so we have to sort of figure out how to approach it. Right. But the first step would be just getting people used to buying waffles.
Right. Well, another thing, you're kind of hitting on it right now. One of the things that I love about the model you've set up, and probably one of the reasons that many restaurants fail, is if their food, I mean, the food here is delicious, but if your food isn't catching on and people aren't stopping in for the ambience or whatever, then you're basically not having any revenue. But here, you have concerts, you have art that people can buy, you have the waffles, you're diversifying into now frozen waffles. I think that's really intelligent the way you brought that into your core model.
Well, one of the things I learned even during the business plan competition was you need to have multiple revenue streams because times change, seasons change. You need to get as much out of what you're spending as you possibly can.
Right.
So once you have a brick and mortar location and you're paying rent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you need to find a way to make as much money out of that as you can.
Right.
So my business model happens to have a music venue.
Right.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a restaurant. You're right. At 4 o'clock, lunch is done, and at 9 o'clock the show starts, and there's some dinner business, but we have this extra boost. I would encourage most places to have live music just in general, because
of course.
music's great,
yeah.
blah, blah, blah. But for what it's worth, you're right, our business model does include 2 revenue streams right off the bat, and that's really more like 6, because then you have catering, you have like takeout, you have delivery, you have the venue itself. You can like sell the soundboard recording of the concert back to the band.
Right.
That's another revenue stream.
That's really clever.
You can rent the space out to a church on Sunday so they can have a location with which to practice their faith on Sunday nights when we don't have any business doing anything. So like we do everything that we can to get as much out of the space as possible. Because if all you're trying to do is resell food, like it's going to be difficult when it's slow. But
and the markups are probably going to be high, which is going to make the customers a little less happy. So I thought it was really clever how you mentioned reselling the music back to the musicians after they play. Did the music industry minor have anything to do with that kind of way of thinking? I mean, it sounds like you're entrepreneurial in your approach to a lot of these things to begin with. But what did your educational background, how did that help you?
Well, I mean, in music industry, I studied audio production. That's what I love. I love like studio recording. I love microphone placement. I love recording, that whole aspect. And I spent 5.5 years as a radio DJ on WAER. So like I'm like radio guy, studio guy. I love recording. So like the Firewire jack on the back of this mixer is its own revenue stream. Because if a band has a killer show, they want to release a live album. We can track the show while they're playing. And sell it to them for like $20 or $40, or whatever they want. Or if they want it mixed for 3 hours and mastered, $300. But in any case, like that itself is its own revenue stream, which will then help the whole thing. You know what I mean? So I think it's a little bit to do with a bunch of things. Like I've got the background with the music industry minor, but also being a musician is like the biggest part because my band travels the country and the world, all year long, and I go to all these different places and I experience what they think music venue means. So I try to take all the best ideas back. This one here was just a clever one. Before I opened the Funk N Waffles, I had a sound business. So I had a PA system, and we go and we do bands or festivals, and we run the sound.
That's cool.
And so I was already kind of familiar with like what's possible. Nowadays it's even easier, but we have a board here that will allow you to multi-track the performance. And so there are occasions where someone's like, "Hey, I want to go film my new DVD album at the Funk N Waffles." Well, we can do that.
It's really cool. It's cool. Well, that hits on something I wanted to talk about later too. So part of the value proposition here seems to be you come here, you get all sorts of art, you get a great collection of vinyls, you have physical art, paintings, photos on the walls, stand-up comedy, live music. How does that all build into the overall vibe? And on top of that, have you found in conversations with people that being in Sophistifunk has added to the level of credibility or authenticity of this restaurant and the brand as a whole?
Wow. So do you want to break it down into a couple parts there?
Yeah. It's kind of a multi-pronged question.
So what was the first
part?
So
I guess the part that I'm most interested in right now, since you're on the topic of your band, how does Sophistifunk and your involvement add to the credibility of what you're doing here?
Well, I think the most obvious way to tell is at the music venue level, because essentially when a band comes in, they're taken care of in a way, like the way that I like being taken care of as a musician.
Right.
And so that translates to the audience from the performance itself. You know, you can go to a club, the band rolls in, everyone treats them like a jerk.
Right.
They put on a bad show,
Right.
everyone just has a bad time.
Right.
You know, but we treat our bands really, really well. We treat all our performers and our artists like the way they should be, you know, respectively, and we take care of them, we feed them, we get them paid as much as we possibly can. And that translates through their performance and their energy, and that goes right to the audience. And so I think that's one of the more obvious ways to tell, like, hey, the guy that owns this place is a musician. It's like,
right.
well, you can tell because, like, I just rolled in here and started eating waffles. You know what I mean? Or, like, there's a sound guy here, like, talking to me in English. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there's a lot of places where it's like, they're just so, like, hands off.
Disconnected.
You know, but we're like, you know what? This is our job. In fact, funk comes first, man. It's called Funk N Waffles.
Right.
So it's like, number one thing is, like, we'll take care of the musician and we'll take care of the customer in the sense that there's funky music playing. Obviously, we had to lower it for this, you know, interview, but like, I got like a crazy like 39-day funk mix going on.
That's awesome. That's great.
And so I think those are ways in which you're like, hey, like this guy's obviously like a touring musician or something because they got great music playing, they treat the bands well, they got like the funky kind of vibe. You know, at least I think that's probably an easy way to translate it.
That's a slogan waiting to happen. Funk comes first.
Funk comes first.
Right,
man.
right.
Get down, eat up.
Exactly. The second part of that question was sort of, I'm assuming you don't make a ton of money off of the paintings and whatnot. I'm sure that's not what's sustaining the company.
Right.
So how does this sort of community you're building around local artists, and that includes stand-up comedians, commentary, live painting that I've seen, what's the value to this community you're building?
Well, I mean, you know, one of the aspects of our atmosphere, of the whole vibe, and the reason people like spending time here is the visual look to the place. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So even though we don't make a killing or anything on the artwork, having the artwork on the walls alone adds to the whole environment. And so really, it's a space to allow artists to show off their work, especially if their work, like, if I like it, you know, if it fits my vibe or my vibe here, Funk N Waffles, you know what I mean? But so it serves those two purposes. Like, yeah, there's a commission-based sales. People do buy paintings all the time.
Right.
The walls clear out
That's
and they fill with more art. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's helping feed the artist community. And it also helps us a little bit, you know, but it's not like, you know, selling lots of waffles. It's a couple paintings a couple times a month.
Right.
But it is the atmosphere. So that's kind of the main reason. That goes the same with the comedians and musicians and the DJs and everything, in that even if like the venue isn't the most profitable element of the business, it provides so much to the actual environment and the ambiance that like it's kind of integral. You know what I mean? Like, you need it because they need it, because we all need this community atmosphere.
That's a really cool way to think about it. I mean, now I'm even thinking, if you're right next to Chuck's, which for anybody who's not from Syracuse, Chuck's is arguably, it's awesome. It's arguably the most popular bar on campus. You're almost at the point where I feel like people can be a Friday night and be like, what do you want to do? I'm tired of Chuck's. Let's go to Funk N Waffles.
Right.
And get into that.
Well, now we sell alcohol, actually. You can do that and like keep drinking.
Right, that's really cool.
Because it used to be like the spot you go like get dessert or go home. But you could actually keep
it going.
Keep
that's
party
great.
going.
That's awesome. That's great. So we actually have some questions that have come through the audience.
Yeah, no way. Yeah. Someone's watching out there. I see you, 3 viewers. I see that.
Billy Seskovich asks if Funk N Waffles is your passion, or if you've had to make compromises along the way.
Oh, interesting. That could kind of be 2 questions. I mean, Funk N Waffles is my passion, and we didn't get there with the story, but I bought my business partner out a couple of years ago, and that was one of the times in my life where I knew. I mean, I looked at him in the eye and I was like, if you're out, like, I'll just buy this because it is my passion. It is what I want to do. I want to sell waffles for the rest of my life. Like, it's crazy. I love saying it because it sounds so ridiculous, but it's like, I do.
Right,
and I put everything I have into it. And then, so the second part of this question was,
have you made compromises along the way?
Yes. I mean, you know, yes, all the time, actually. Not any compromises to my integrity, which is like how I live. And I won't mess that. But also, I guess, just compromises in life for instance, if you have to work a lot, right, you can't like establish a certain kind of relationship with someone.
Right.
Whether that's family, friends, your lover, whatever it is, like being like a workaholic or having to work more than most people, that's a compromise.
Right.
I remember when we first opened the business, my girlfriend and I split up because it was basically like, look, like you're gonna go on in life and like I'm gonna open this freaking restaurant. Like that's just the nature of it. I don't even know if it would have been possible to, keep going. Yeah, exactly. It's just been like, I would have ended up neglecting our relationship. Now I'm coming around full circle. I have like 2 restaurants, general managers. I can actually sleep at night. I actually go home once in a while.
The beauty of growing up.
I can take my girlfriend out. Like we have a great time. We go on vacation.
That's awesome.
So I'm actually able to hold those kind of relationships now. I'm very proud of that. But at first, especially when you're first opening a business, you will have to make compromises. My main thing is just don't compromise your own integrity. Money can do crazy things to people, and I think it's important that you see right through it all and say, hey, like I can live off waffles and fun. So I built a business that's called Funk N Waffles. You want to create a way to make a living as an entrepreneur that is how you live and breathe. You know what I mean? Because if you're trying to tackle something that isn't, then you start to compromise things like your own integrity, your own business decisions.
You become somebody else.
Right.
So it's actually funny. The second question, with you having just said you want to sell waffles for the rest of your life, the second question from D. Cater is why waffles? That doesn't seem to be house party food. So why waffles?
Interesting. Waffles are great because they're really cheap to make and it's a lot of food.
Yeah.
And so there's actually a really good markup on it in the food
when
industry.
You're
selling breakfast food. Breakfast food is much cheaper to sell than like steaks and burgers. When you're starting to deal with like animal meat and like fancy products like that, the margins are much more difficult to like keep a handle on. And so we rely on like flour, butter, sugar, milk, and eggs. So if you're in this business of reselling food, I think breakfast food is a really clever way to go because it's something that everybody doesn't want to cook. You know what I'm saying? Like you always find Saturday and Sunday, you and your family going out for that diner breakfast or brunch all the time. So that's one of the reasons that we locked in on the waffles. It was luck of the draw when we met Dave Kahn in the attic and we were making waffles with Pepperidge Farm cookies. Like that was definitely like. The other thing I'll say is the house parties were fun, but like we never even really charged, or we charged like $1 or $2. We never made any money in college. You know what I mean? And in fact, it's only been a few years since we started like really profiting in any sort of like way that you can like talk about. It takes a while to kind of get the momentum. But for what it's worth, I think it's a clever question. I mean, waffles happened to me by accident, but I'm trying to take control. I think they're better than pancakes. They have all these like nooks and crannies, and so you can like spread the Nutella in there.
Exactly,
and,
make little pools of syrup.
You can hold them with your hands. You can't really hold a pancake or crepe. Crepes, I guess they can kind of hold, but they're like just flappy, flimsy.
Pancakes and doubles a frisbee.
It's true.
You have some like college sports.
But like a well done waffle, you could really throw as a frisbee. You could huck it like.
It's true. Or just knock somebody out with it.
You could definitely knock someone out with like a burnt brownie waffle.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would definitely knock you out.
Exactly. So on a more business-oriented note, I've been thinking a lot lately and hearing a lot, sort of 2 topics that are similar and distant from each other. So I'll kind of ask them as 2 parts. The first is particularly with restaurants. I've heard that in terms of managing it and growing it, you start one restaurant, you start the second, and then you can start 100. Is kind of how I've heard it.
Wow, I love that. If that was true,
I mean, that's just something I heard from one person who has experience. But I guess the basic gist is that you test the model with the first one, and then you test your ability to grow as a manager with the second. And at that point, once you know the model and you know how to do this, and you've already proven it in 2 different locations, it's just a matter of finding places that fit what you're looking for. How do you feel about that?
Well, I like the sound of it. I think I totally get where that's going.
Does it seem?
I actually had the lucky opportunity through Guy Fieri. I was able to meet the owner of Jimmy John's Sandwiches.
That's great.
I asked him for some advice about this exact topic. And one thing he told me is 1 to 2 and then 2 to 10. Because essentially, until you can run 10 restaurants by yourself, how will you convince anyone else to franchise 10 restaurants? You know what I mean? very rarely do you find a franchisee that's just like a single store owner.
Right.
They might do like an entire region of a state. You know, they'll do like all of Syracuse or all of upstate or all of Michigan. You know, so there are people that own either 1, 5, 10, or 55 or 300 franchises. And so you need to first prove to yourself in order to make it work. So he was suggesting like get 10 Funk N Waffles open, corporately owned. By myself,
right.
Then I can say, hey, look, I got 10 working. Like, you know, who's ready? Like,
and they're all profitable.
Exactly. Because I mean, 2 is like, all right, 2 is still sort of like I could run in between them and make them work.
Right.
Which is what I'm currently doing. Until I have it set up so that it's like clockwork, and there's like a book. And you just open the book and you learn.
Here's what you have to do in this
Here's what you do every day, every morning.
Yeah.
I have to get to that franchise model. You know, Starbucks is not a franchise. You can't open a Starbucks. Oh yeah, you cannot open a Starbucks. It's all corporately owned.
Quality control.
Well, they own. Yeah, I mean, it's just
their policy.
just a different approach to a business.
Right.
You can open a McDonald's. You can't open a Starbucks. So I think it's worth mentioning that the same industry has different models, and although franchise is like a nice one, you can also just corporately own everything. Somehow you're that financial beast.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah.
But it's actually a great way to do it because then you have full control over everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I mean, I gotta tell you, Jimmy John sandwiches, I've never been into one that I didn't love. They're always quick, they're always clean, the food's always the same, it's always the right price.
It comes down to establishing the right
He
process.
just kills it with that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got like this funky look to it, and he's got all those cute sayings in
Exactly. Yeah.
They always look good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that feels corporately owned, even though they're all franchised.
Yeah.
So there are ways. I mean, that's kind of the proof of the pudding. What gets me excited is I go into a Jimmy John's and I can always count on the same experience. I've been to 20 McDonald's. They all look different and feel different.
Yeah.
They're crazy. You know what I mean? Some look like they were built in the 70s, and some are built like last year. And they're like different. So, I don't know.
Well, then the second part of that same string of thought, the same series of conversations that we're having lately, is that I've actually heard that starting a global company in 2015 actually, or can be easier than starting a local company. And what people like you are doing is a lot more challenging than what perhaps the software company is doing, or something that scales easily, because this is very human resource intensive and service based in a certain way.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with the service base. When it comes to interacting with humans, that's going to be the most difficult part.
Right.
Of any business, you know what I'm saying? A software company can like invent something and then
and
sell it for $1 billion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, you know, I think it's a good point, especially in the days of Etsy and eBay and Reverb and all these ways where you can sell your products like nationwide and internationally. I guess that might apply with this frozen waffle thing. I could potentially ship 20 frozen waffles to like Abu Dhabi.
Right.
If I can do that, then boom, I'm a global business, just like that. So we're already there. I mean, you can basically order like our T-shirts anywhere you want. I shipped T-shirts to San Francisco. I shipped T-shirts to, you know, I mean, like all over the world.
You should write those people a handwritten note. Thank you for buying.
They get hooked up. Yeah, we definitely
awesome.
talk to them. There's actually is a good way to communicate.
Yeah, that's cool.
But because we're on the TV show Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, and they wear our T-shirts like the staff does.
Oh, that's great.
So people order the T-shirt every time they see it.
That's great.
They're like, when the episode airs, I ship out T-shirts.
That's really cool.
It's awesome.
Well, that hits on actually the last question I had for you. You've mentioned it a variety of ways now. But how did the Food Network help you? How did that exposure help you? You mentioned Jimmy John's. You mentioned T-shirt sales. Have you seen anything else that's come out of that?
Yeah, I mean, being on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives changed everything. Right. In the sense that most of our business for like the first 2 or 3 years after the show aired has been like out of New York State. Like most of the business. We literally like doubled our gross sales the first year.
So you're talking about people who drive in?
Yeah.
Wow.
Basically, the show airs in the U.S., in London, or in the U.K., and in Canada.
Okay.
And people see the show all the freaking time.
Yeah.
It's also syndicated. So like it airs all the time. Our episode airs every like 6 to 8 weeks usually, on average.
Yeah.
Plus, they added us to a best of episode. So it's actually 2 episodes on rotation. So every time it airs, someone writes it down on their bucket list. And when they drive down Route 90, they come down and check us out.
Right.
And it's like millions of people who like do this. So it's actually changed like our business a lot because we get this destination thing where it's not just SU, in local Syracuse community.
Right.
There's people from all over the world who want to eat these waffles.
Literally all.
We got lucky. Our episode is amazing. He's like so happy. He just got off the plane. It was early in the morning. Me and him hit it off. The vibes are like amazing. I watch the show all the time. I love the show.
Yeah.
So when they came in, I was like ready. I was like ready for this. Like,
that's awesome.
You put me on Triple D, like I'm in. You know.
That's awesome.
So we had a great episode. I think that really drives people to say, I need to try that waffle.
Right.
Guy says so much great stuff about our food that it just motivates you to say, hey, I gotta try it from the waffles.
Right. That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, and then that was my last question for you. The last question that I want to wrap up with, I think it's a good final question. It comes from the audience. Is what's your favorite waffle?
So, okay. When I'm making my own waffle, I'll make a chocolate chip buttermilk waffle. I'll put mint chip ice cream on it. I'll put chocolate peanut butter ice cream on it. I'll put strawberries on it, whipped cream, and maple syrup.
Wow.
And that would be like...
So is that dessert, breakfast, or lunch?
That happens once a year, and it's just like usually dessert.
Right.
But if I had to choose a savory waffle off the menu, I would go for the smoked Gouda and herb stuffed waffle with the tuna salad on top. And that's by far my favorite waffle. It tastes like nothing else I've ever had in my life. And it's just awesome. It's elevated. It's transgressed like the waffle. It's become a new thing. It's smoky because it's smoked Gouda. It's cheesy. It's gooey. It's crispy. That's awesome. It's got the herb thing. And then I'm gonna eat one like right after it. So it's crazy. So that'd be my favorite.
Well, to wrap up, do you have any kind of advice for entrepreneurs out there?
I just like to point out that we are so lucky to be on planet Earth right now with the internet and access to all these resources. You can basically go to college for free now online. There's basically nothing stopping you from opening a business or pursuing whatever it is you want besides you. So whatever you're afraid of, whatever it is, at least you got to know that the time is now, and you're lucky as whatever to be alive in 2015. So I would just encourage everyone out there who's watching this or who's just trying to get into the business world, is just remember, like, there's really nothing stopping you. You can do it all yourself from scratch. And I would just suggest getting as much experience in the industry as possible.
That's awesome. I think those are great words to wrap it up on. Just for anybody watching, if you want to connect with Funk N Waffles, you can follow them at Funk N Waffles on Twitter, or you can go to the website funknwaffles.com to check out their menu and any upcoming shows they have. And you can continue the conversation going forward on Twitter as well, using the hashtag IdeaChatCNY and tweeting at IdeaCuse. Take it easy, guys.